So the first thing we want to do is create a new project, and we're going to create a .NET Console, .NET Core app. And let's change the project name, and we'll change it to My Console App, and create it. So then .NET will create a project, and you can see we've got a program here where our main code is, and let's go and look at the solution, and then we're going to add a reference to our web service, and we're going to create a connected service, and we're going to use a WCF web service reference provider, and then enter in the endpoint of the SOAP web service and hit go. And let's change the name of the namespace to something that means a little bit more. So I'm just going to go and create CT Dynamics SL .customer maintenance, and then hit next. I'll also generate synchronous operations and hit finish, and it'll go ahead and create what we need to create. So now we have our reference created for our customer maintenance web service. And now let's go back into the program.cs and actually write some code. So we'll first want to get rid of this hello world bit of code, and so I want to make things a little bit more dynamic. So I'm going to create a settings capability so that we don't have to recompile if we want to change the actual location of the endpoint, license key information, that type of thing. So first I'm going to create a settings config.cs, so basically a class, and then this class will have all of my settings in here, so site key, site ID, license key, and whatnot. And so this way we can then have a JSON file that will contain this information. We can even encrypt it if we wanted to. So here I'm going to add a new item, and I'm going to search for JSON, and we'll create a JSON file called appsettings.json. And then this will go ahead and mirror what that class was that we just created for settings. And we'll be able to store our actual settings here. And you can see you would end up replacing your site ID, license key, and whatnot there. So let's go ahead and just close that out and save it. So we'll now go ahead and reference settings so that we can then easily access all of our settings through the private variable settings. But you can see I've got a few things that I need to create. I have some dependencies, so system.io. This I configuration, I need to add a Nougat package to be able to accommodate that. So we'll just go into manage Nougat packages. And we'll go and search for Microsoft Extensions configuration. And we'll then go ahead and install that. Accept that, and it'll go and install that. Now let's go back and see if we have more dependencies, and it looks like we do. So let's first, I'm going to do a using. I could go ahead and explicitly use Microsoft.extensions.config configuration, but I'm just going to use a using statement so I don't have to deal with that. We've got one more that we've got, maybe a couple more, the JSON file. So we're going to go and add another Nougat package for this. So manage Nougat packages. Usually I would do all this all at once, but I'm doing it once at a time just to go ahead and show how this is all done. So look for Microsoft Extensions Configuration JSON. We'll install that. Accept it, and it'll install. It looks like we might still have a few more dependencies here. So you can see the bind statement doesn't have its dependency, so let's go and again manage Nougat packages, and we'll search for what we need to do. So Microsoft.extensions.configuration.binder, Install that. Go ahead and accept it. Let's see where we are now. Now you can see that that dependency is resolved. So now we have an easy way to reference settings when we create a reference to our customer web service with a customer header. We can then go ahead and use those settings to fill in the SOAP header automatically without having to recompile every time you want to change your license key or any of that type of thing. So now I've got a reference directly to customer services, and this customer service is what the SOAP client is when we make calls to the actual web service. So let's do a little bit more coding, some actual coding now instead of all this setup. And I'm going to just create a instance of this application, and I'm going to do a run it. This method doesn't exist yet, so hit Control and the period, and it will generate it. Let's remove the default code, and we'll put in our own. So we're going to make a call to the customer service and get the screen by customer ID and put it in return value. Now the customer header is where all those SOAP headers are with all the license information and all that. And I just hard coded the customer ID C300 because I just want to go ahead and bring something back as a test to show how this goes. Now I'm also going to go and make sure that we've got some error handling. So if an error message happens, like say the item isn't found or something like that, then we want to throw an exception and let the user know what happened. I also want to do a little bit more error handling. I want to check to see if the customer ID that is returned is empty or a null. Then I want to let the user know that too, stating that, hey, things didn't come back, you know, that type of thing, so that you've just got a little bit more exception handling here. So after you've done your error checking, you can do something with the data that's returned. So in this case, I'm just going to go and write it to the console. So I'm going to put out some information about the customer. And let's just show the customer ID. And I'll also show the customer name. Maybe we can go ahead and show a little bit more information, like maybe the balance or something like that. So I'll just write another line out to the console. Now you would, if you're doing a mobile app or a web app or something like that, you would do a variety of things based on what you need to do. But in this case, I'm just going to go and show it and prove it that things are actually outputting from the file. See, we'll just put out Kerbal and we'll put it out in a format. Another thing we want to do is make sure that that app settings JSON file is always copied out when you rebuild, so that way your settings will pick up. Now let's run it and see what happens. I'll put in a few breakpoints and hit run. Build, you can see the little console screen. Now I can step through my program and we'll go into see run it. Now it's going and actually calling the customer web service to retrieve a value, and let's add a watch for return value so we can actually see what came back. Get a little bit extra room here, and you can see we've got this whole big customer object that's come back, and you see all the information about this customer. Okay, so let's then step through the rest of the program, and we'll see it's going to write line and write line again, and then let's take a look at the console, and there we go. Now let's try this in a Linux shell. So I'm just going to go to the folder where I created this application using my Linux session, and you can see everything there. And let's go and do .NET run. And there we go. It's now running not only in Windows but also in Linux.